Greetings, OCO. What the deal is, Wagwan. This is your brother Chief Flying Eagle, aka Lord Maracan, aka the Black Identity Slayer. What's up, my peoples? Man, listen, I'm about hold on. I'm about to drop some information on y'all, man. The majority of y'all have never heard. But like I said before, you know the chief always come and drop it like it's hot. You dig? Now, a lot of times, well, first off, let me just acknowledge my brother, Chief Red Bear, man, for he showed me a video with a Native American talking, sharing some information. But here's the thing with the Native Americans, right? They speak the truth, but at the same time they tell a lie. So you have to know how to literally get the truth in what they are saying and then do your own due diligence and then come out with the actual truth. You feel me? So that's what I did. And once I come to you with it, you already know I've done my due diligence. However, I'm going to ask you to do your due diligence of what I'm teaching you today. All right? So we're about to go into some information, like I said, that's going to shock you and take you to a whole different level in regards to what happened to our people. All right? And how this was all systematic. You feel me? And don't forget, you heard it here for the first time. All right? Let's go. Boom. So I'm going to be reading from a document, peace and love, what the deal is. Welcome to the build, the goddess. What I'm going to do is I'm going to be reading from a document, a lesson that I created and put together. So if you put some comments on here, I may not be able to see it immediately. So just keep that in mind. All right. Because I'm busy reading. So let us read. Reading is fun for the mental. You know how I do. All right, good. Let's go. So this is a lesson that I put together. And as you can see, the topic of the lesson is actually on lobotomy. But what I'm going to show you is, which a lot of people, you may know what a lobotomy is. Some people may, hear it for the first time. And it's okay if you never heard of it. And if you heard of it and you didn't know what it was or how it was used to literally create genocide on our people, well, guess what? You're hearing it here today for the first time. So if you hear anybody else talking about that, just know where it came from. Okay, it came from the chief, and it's okay. They could talk about it because it's about sharing the information. You dig? Big up to my brother, Chief Red Bear. You did. Let us rock. All right, now. Lobotomy, psychiatric control, and indigenous identity disruption. I'm going to show you how that tool, that procedure, it's a medical procedure, literally a barbaric medical procedure that was used on our people to wipe out their memory. So when you hear Native Americans talking about, oh, well, y'all keep saying y'all indigenous, but y'all don't speak your languages. And a lot of you get stuck, like a deer in a headlight because you don't know how to respond. You feel me? And it's okay. But I'm giving you the tools so that you understand what truly happened. You see, they can't try that with me because, trust me, I know how to come at them with them bows and arrows. You dig? But this is to teach you about what happened to our people. And the reason on a grand scale why a lot of our people don't speak our indigenous languages. You feel me? So it's easier to convince them that they came from Africa on slave ships. All right? Even that is part of the indoctrination, and I'm going to show you how it happened in twofold. All right? If you're ready for this, let's go. All right, boom. Lobotomy, psychiatric control, and indigenous identity disruption. And all that stuff is well documented. You could go look it up. There's medical records. It exists. Okay, so do your due diligence. The purpose of this lesson, in this lesson, I will examine the historical practice of lobotomy from its origins, its effects, with a specific focus on how original indigenous people, American Indians, were impacted through institutionalization, racial misclassification, and identity disruption. The lesson is grounded in documented history. This is not an illusion. It may sound like a movie. It may sound like a TV experiment. You feel me? But it is documented and it's historical. Okay? It happened to our people. So therefore, this lesson is grounded in documented history, medical records, and government practices, avoiding speculation which clearly identified systematic harm. Okay, that was a government practice. Number one, here we go. What is lobotomy? A lobotomy is a now discredited psychosurgical procedure. So they don't use it anymore. Okay? But it was very prominent in the early 20th century. So therefore, a lobotomy is a now discredited surgical procedure in which connections, okay, in the brain's frontal lobes were intentionally severed or destroyed in an attempt to control behavior, emotions, and thought processes. Think about what I just said. That's what the government was doing. Well, let's say allegedly, right? But guess what? You could look it up for real, and it happened for real. But I'm saying that for my own protection, my own disclaimer. All right? So with that being said, once your frontal lobe is damaged, right? This is what happens. It affects your behavior, it affects your emotions, and it affects your thought process. So it's a surgical procedure, psychosurgical procedure. Functions of the frontal lobe. So this is what the frontal lobe is responsible for. Personality and sense of self. If your frontal lobe is damaged or impaired, then you lose your sense of personality. In other words, you lost the sense of who you are, a sense of self. That's what that's one of the effects of your frontal lobe being damaged. Language production and expression, memory integration. Okay, so you get confused as to thinking in terms of your memory process. Other things could be put into your mind to make it seem that's part of your reality when it's not. Now, once again, people, you may think that this is, I'm literally talking about a movie. No, I'm talking about what happened to our people, like in real life. Okay? In real life. Judgment and decision making. Because once you have gone through the process of a lobotomy, it affects your judgment and decision making. So when we're talking about our people had, the allodial lands, the title to the lands, you feel me? Original treaties signed, all of a sudden treaties are being ratified. Then you keep asking the question, well, how did this happen to our people? Well, I'm giving you answers of how a lot of those things transpired. Because if you have the title to a land, the allodial title to the land, and you go through a procedure called a lobotomy, guess what? You could be influenced to change and turn over that document or that land to somebody else without even knowing what you did. And it could have been done without your own consent. Treaties being signed, you feel me? Ratified. And you don't even know, but you're the one doing it, but you're not aware of what you're doing. My people, I keep telling y'all, too many of you think that the United States is actually our friend. You did. But I keep telling people, you're going to wake up into a very, 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 and I'm stressing that, rude awakening. Okay? The system does not have the best interests of the original indigenous people of the land, aka American Indians. All right? So through the process of impairing or damaging your frontal lobe, which helps with the function of personality and sense of self, language production and comprehension, memory integration, judgment and decision making, emotional regulation, okay, cultural and social behavior. Damage to this area does not heal the illness. It suppresses cognition and agency. Okay? All right, cool. Number 2, origin of the lobotomy, where the idea came from. Development in the context of early 20th century psychiatry, influenced by eugenics, social control, and colonial medical thinking. Medical illness was framed as a biological defect rather than trauma. Okay, so a lot of times in the World War, when veterans came back, instead of treating their trauma, okay, based on what you call their experience based on trauma, the postmortem, I think it's called postmortem stress, right? Instead of them treating that as trauma, they looked at it as an illness framed as a biological defect. That's what they did. And when they realized stuff like that was working, they started using it on indigenous population. All right. So now the introduction of the practice. Introduction. It was introduced in 1935 by the Portuguese neurologist Antonio Egas Muniz, originally called prefrontal lobotomy, claimed to calm patients by disrupting neural pathways, awarded for a Nobel Prize in 1949, but later criticized. Can you imagine, right? This dude came up with a procedure to literally destroy people's frontal lobe. In other words, fry your brain. And he got a Peace Nobel Prize for that. Can you imagine that? This legitimized, this made it legitimate for lobotomy internationally and opened the door for mass use. Okay, so once again, the veterans and people that came from fighting the wars, they were the people that it was practiced on first. And then when they realized the effect, okay, that it had on them, then guess what? It was time to roll it out internationally, okay, for mass use. Number 3, lobotomy in the United States. Primary figure responsible for its spread, Walter Freeman. Isn't that amazing that you have a Walter Plecker, part of eugenics in Virginia? Now you have a Walter Freeman who is responsible for lobotomy, for the spread of lobotomy in the United States. Can you imagine that? I wonder what's wrong with these Walters. But anyway, Walter Freeman, an American neurologist, a white American from a prominent medical family, not a surgeon, all right, partnered with surgeons and later performed procedures himself. He was not a surgeon. He didn't have a license, but he partnered with surgeons and later performed procedures himself. Freeman's role, what he did was he popularized the transorbital lobotomy ice pick method. Now I want to show you exactly what the ice pick method looks like. So what are we going to do? We're going to pull that up. All right. Let me pull that up for y'all real quick. I'm going to show you exactly what it looks like. Let me see if I can pull up an image. All right, give me a second. Give me 1 second. Lobotomy images. Here we go. Lobotomy surgical images. All right, here we go. Boom. All right, so let me pull this up for y'all and show you what this dude was actually doing. All right, let me stop sharing this screen right here. And I'm going to share this other screen. Give me 1 second. And let me share this screen right here and show y'all. Well, yeah. Hopefully, your father ain't one of those evil, those evil Walters. You know what I mean? But anyway, let me go ahead and share that real quick. Let me show you what the process looks like. All right, from a visual perspective. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so this is the ice pick method. So what they do is, what he was doing was this. All right, this dude didn't have no license. This dude was taking something like an ice pick, right? And he was pushing it through people's, their eyebrow, okay, through their eyebrows and shooting it straight up into their frontal lobe and damaging the frontal lobe. You feel me? That's what he was doing. So as you could see, I'm talking about real pictures. This was real. This was happening for real. Okay? Look. So I tell people, man, we better wake up and realize what was done to our people, man. All right? All right, cool. Let me stop sharing my screen. Okay? Boom. Let's get back to the document that I put together. Hold on for a second. This is going to literally amaze, well, I wouldn't say amaze you, but it's going to really bother you because it bothers me. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of times we tend to wonder, how did our people get into that position? Why, we had so much control and all of a sudden we are where we at, because all of those things played a part. How we end up losing our language, well, guess what? All those things played a part. Okay. Now check this out. That was in the early 20th century. Now, so what he did was, this gentleman, Freeman, he popularized, right, the transorbital lobotomy, the ice pick method, traveled the country performing lobotomies in state mental hospitals, personally performed, that's personally, all right, he performed and supervised approximately 3,500 to 4,000 lobotomies, trained other physicians nationwide, leading to 40 to 50,000 lobotomies in the US, right? Now, that is what was recorded. That is what was recorded. We're not talking about the ones that they did and not put on the record. That is just what was recorded. Okay, some sources say 60,000, but I went with the lower number, 40 to 50,000. That's recorded in the US, right? Boom. Time period of widespread use, late 1930s through the mid 1950s. Okay. Reasons for the unrecorded lobotomies before the 1930s, because it was happening before the 1930s, but it wasn't considered legal. You feel me? So they could not put that on the record per se. So therefore, reasons for the unrecorded lobotomies before 1930. Number one, informal technique. Walter Freeman's transorbital lobotomy, the ice pick procedure, was designed to be quick and simple, performable in a doctor's office in minutes without general anesthesia or a sterile operating room. The man didn't use anesthesia. The man didn't have sterile equipment or even an operating room. Literally, the man was butchering people's frontal lobe. You dig? This made it far easier to perform without the rigorous documentation associated with major surgery in a hospital setting. So he had to do it, like when people go do they do plastic surgery and they do BBLs and all these different work on their body, but they don't go to a licensed surgeon. I forgot what they call the term, but anyway, they go to is it called the black market doctors? I don't know, man. There's a term for it. But anyway, he was practicing that before the 1930s. That's what he was doing. And he was going all over the country doing that. All right. So therefore, it made it far easier to perform without a rigorous documentation associated with the major surgery in a hospital. Freeman even performed many himself in a camper van while traveling across the US. So this dude literally was traveling across the US in his camper van all over the US, giving people lobotomies. You feel me? Number two, lack of consent and oversight. Many lobotomies, particularly in state-run asylums, were performed without the patients or their family informed or consent. So people were getting lobotomies and they didn't even know why they was getting it. They were told it was for something else. This lack of formal procedure and ethical oversight made it easier to bypass official record keeping. Okay? Next, overcrowded asylums. Public mental hospitals were often severely overcrowded, and doctors were incentivized to find quick ways to manage patients, making them easier to handle or allowing them to return home. In such chaotic environments, Meticulous record keeping might have been a low priority. Next, perception as a minor procedure. Freeman promoted his transorbital method as being easier than curing a toothache in some cases. So he's telling people, man, listen, man, what I got for y'all, this procedure right here, I'm telling you, it's easier than taking, than taking out the tooth. This minimized its perceived significance, potentially leading to less stringent recordings compared to the major brain surgery. Okay? But they were actually having brain surgery. They didn't even know because the man was damaging their frontal lobe. Vulnerable patients. Patients included children, women, and severely mentally ill who were especially vulnerable to having the procedure ordered by their family members or doctors without their knowledge or consent. All right. Number 4, where lobotomies were practiced. Lobotomies were performed in nearly every U.S. state through the state-run mental hospitals. States with especially high numbers: California, New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois. Lobotomies were practiced in Virginia, notably by Lynchburg-born neurosurgeon named Dr. James Winston Watts, who partnered with Walter Freeman, the inventor of the ice-pick lobotomy, and was prolific practitioner, making Virginia a significant location for the procedure, although heavily practiced is relative to the era and its prominence. These states had the largest psychiatric hospital system and were frequent stops on Freeman's national tours. Why do you think so? I'm going to get into that and the effect it had on indigenous original people. All right. Number 5, insane asylums and American Indians / Native Americans. American Indians / Native Americans were disproportionately institutionalized due to boarding school trauma, criminalization of indigenous cultures and practices, alcohol prohibition, enforcement, federal ward of state status, racist psychiatric diagnosis. The reason why I left Native Americans in there is because a lot of times when we see American Indian, the goal and the process was to eliminate the American Indian. Save the man. How do you do that? You start changing the status, put Native American in place, colored, black, Negro, all these different identities. You see what I'm saying? But I left Native American in there for a purpose, to show you, and this is well documented, what was happening to American Indians when they went to have those procedures in the hospital and the form that they had to fill out. So we're going to get to that. I just want you to know why I left Native American in there. All right, boom. Inside the institutions, original indigenous patients were commonly diagnosed with schizophrenia or mental deficiency, subjected to heavy sedation and electroconvulsive therapy, in some cases subjected to lobotomy. Consent standards were weak or ignored, especially for wards of state. All right? For wards of state. Number 6, racial misclassification in medical records. How patients were labeled. State hospitals' intake forms typically allowed only white, Negro, and colored, and other. In many hospitals, there was no category for American Indian or Native result. You feel me? So American Indian / Native were frequently recorded as Negro or other. And that is the reason why I left Native American, to show you. When has ever in the history of the Americas, Native Americans were called Negroes? Never. So if there's there is well documented, okay, hospital intake records that show indigenous people came to take lobotomies, and they were told you have two choices to put your race, either Negro or other. I guarantee you, Native Americans would have put other and not Negroes. Look how they dealing with us today, and we are not even Negroes. You feel me? The point I'm making is, when you go look at those intake records, you could not put American Indian. You had to put either Negro or other. I guarantee you, the real Indians put Negro. Okay? If Native Americans had that process done, they guarantee you, they put other. That's why I left Native American in there, because they have never been called Negroes. Okay? Next, classification was based on appearance and administrative convenience. So if the application or the classification was based once again on appearance, and they said you had to put Negro or other, why would a Native American put Negro? Think about what I just said, and that is well documented. Well documented. Okay? So let us proceed. Medical institutions treated Negro as a racial category assumed to mean African descent. That's why our people are going through this mental situation right now, because they think Negro means African. No, people. You had Negro de Terra, the Negroes of the land, aka the black of the lands, and you had the Negro de Guinea, which was the African Negro. I hear people talking about, oh, the Africans ain't Negroes. Yes, they were Negroes. They were Negroes de Guinea. African Negroes. But I ain't no damn Negro. Just so y'all know, I'm just saying what they called us. Okay? All right, cool. I ain't Negro, I ain't black. Y'all could keep that. And I ain't African either. And I ain't African American. Y'all could keep all of that if that's what you want. I cannot force you to be who you think you are. You feel me? Now, let's proceed. This practice is documented in state hospital records. Guaranteed. Documented. I'm not making it up. It's documented. All right? Hospital records, medical journals, and congressional investigations. They have those documents. Number 7, the effects of lobotomy. Documented outcomes is documented. Common long-term effects include loss of personal and sense of self. You feel me? Let's read that again. Loss of personal and sense of self. Memory disruption. Language impairment or loss. Emotional flattening. Okay? Emotional flattening. Loss of initiative and critical thinking. Increased dependency and compliance. I'm going to go over these symptoms again, and we're going to break it down individually. Okay? Loss of personality and self memory, right? And self. So basically, our people lost their identity. Each and every one of them that went through the procedure of lobotomy, they lost their identity. And the problem with that situation is, once they wipe out your memory, so to speak, they implant new memories in your mind. Y'all think this is just a movie? No, it happened to all people for real. And it's well documented. You feel me? Memory disruption. That's part of that. Erasing your memory. They showed it to you in Men in Black. But they flashed the light, but they wasn't flashing no light. They was literally taking an ice pick, shoving it through your eye, your eyebrows, and damaging your frontal lobe. Language impairment or lost. So when these Native Americans and these Pan-Africans and these Negropeans start talking about, if y'all indigenous, how come you don't speak your language? Well, Negro, that's why. That's why. But it doesn't matter what you show people. Okay? They are not going to get it. So I don't even waste my time. I just want to teach the information to those who are looking for true answers and looking to see and find out for real what happened to our people, what transpired. You dig? Emotional flattening. Basically, you become desensitized. You see, like right now, if people in our hoods, you hear gunshots, guess what? Them gunshots, guess what? They don't phase you, because emotional flattening, they get you desensitized to certain trauma. So it becomes normal. Okay? Police brutality, it becomes normal. Systematic oppression, it becomes normal. Loss of initiative and critical thinking. Most people don't think critically. You feel me? They just think based on emotions. This is real, man. It's real. Increased dependency and compliance. That's why the government had to make sure that you have to feed from the breast of the government. And if there's any threat to taking that feeding away from you, then you feel like all is lost. It was done intentionally. So therefore, as a result, you have to comply to everything that they say, or else they will take away the privileges. It is all part of the system, man. Social and cultural consequences. Loss of cultural knowledge and practices. Loss of indigenous language use. Heightened suggestibility to authority figures. Increased vulnerability to ideological or religious influences. Go look at our neighborhoods. What do you see? Every corner is a church and a liquor store. You feel me? Lobotomy removed resistance rather than curing the illness. It wasn't to cure the illness that you supposedly had, okay? It was to remove that rebellious nature that you had. They knew we were the wild Indians. They had to find some way to calm our people down. You feel me? Boom. Number 8. Was this medicine, experimentation, or war? Documented classifications. Medical experimentation, poor science, poor consent. Human rights abuse. State-sanctioned violation. Reasoned interpretation. While not legally classified as warfare, lobotomy can accurately be described as a form of non-military warfare against identity, using medical authority to suppress autonomy, culture, and resistance. Number 9, generational identity reset. How identity disruption occurs. Most people don't realize it only takes 2 generations to disrupt literally your memory in regards to your ancestry, or who you truly are. So how identity disruption occurs? First generation, trauma, institutionalization, language suppression. Now, next, the second generation, raised without the language, raised without the culture, raised without historical continuity. Now, most people think that a generation is 100 years. No, it's not. A generation is 20 to 25 years for the woman and 25 to 30 years for a man. So can you imagine? Let's go back all the way to 1491. Let's go back all the way to the 1500s, the 1600s. Do you know how many intervals of 25 to 30 years generation that has transpired? So when it only took about 60 years to lose your language completely, lose your identity completely, but Native Americans want to ask us, how the hell did we lose our languages and our identity? Because guess what? They know exactly what happened. You feel me? They know what happened. Some of them actually were put on the lobotomy as well. You feel me? To give them a new implant memory to say that they are the original people, and forgot they even came from Siberia, Mongolia, and Eurasians and all that. My people, this is real. It happened for real. So some of these people, that's all they know. It's not even their fault, some of them. It's not even their fault. Man, this is so deep, it's not even funny. Within 2 generations, like I said, 2 generations, the max, 60 years top, lived identity can be largely replaced, even though ancestry remains unchanged. What does that mean? If you're an American Indian, your ancestry cannot change. However, your lived identity can be changed. It could be replaced. What does that mean? They could teach you that you are African when in actuality, you're actually American Indian. Your ancestry remains the same, but the indoctrination is your living identity. And that was changed. So the majority of our people, their living identity was changed, but their ancestry still remains. You feel me? So they only became African on paper through genocide and also through this process of lobotomy, and it was being taught to the younger generations because the elders, their memory was erased. Man, wow. Yep, the Carlisle School was one of them as well. Now, accelerating the factors, forced education systems, medical abuse and institutionalization, legal reclassification, media and religious dominance. So when they're teaching us in the cowboy movies that the Indians don't look like us, you feel me? That was part of the reprogramming as well. 12 years of slavery, Amistad, Roots, all that was part of the programming. Family separation, you feel me? Number 10, the summary and statement. Lobotomy emerged from the early 20th century. Psychiatric and eugenic thinking was popularized in the United States through state mental hospitals and resulted in the permanent loss of identity. You hear that? Permanent loss of identity, people. Language and autonomy for tens of thousands of people, including American Indian natives, all right, who were disproportionately institutionalized and often misclassified in medical records, combined with generational trauma and cultural suppression. These practices contributed to rapid identity disruption that could occur within a few as 2 generations. All right? It didn't take a long time for our people to lose their identity. 2 generations is no more than 60 years. Okay? Lobotomy, suggestibility, and religious influence. Important clarification. Lobotomy was not officially designed or authorized as a method of religious conversion. However, the documented neurological and psychological effect of lobotomy frequently made patients highly susceptible to external authority, including religious authority. Like I told y'all before, religion and the churches was a trap house. So they worked together with those asylum hospitals and those institutions. Pay attention. This distinction is critical for historical accuracy. All right? Neurological effects relevant to belief and influence. Damage to the frontal lobes commonly resulted in the loss of critical thinking and skepticism, impaired judgment and reasoning. That's why our people always talk about we cannot trust each other. Do you think it's intentional? No. On our part, no, it's not. It was programmed to be that way. You feel me? Emotional flattening, dependency, reduced ability to evaluate or challenge information. That's why when we tell them we're American Indians, they cannot process that. There's no critical thinking. Cognitive dissonance kicks into what was re-implanted in their memory. African, 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 slave ship, slave ship, slave ship. You feel me? So therefore, it reduced the ability to evaluate critically and challenge information. Heightened compliance with authority figures. You did. That's why when a lot of our people are traveling, they're behind the wheel. They hear the police siren. The police may not even be going and following them or even pulling them over. The mere fact they hear the siren, guess what? It injects some type of fear. All that is part of the systematic conditioning of original indigenous people. It was done that way intentionally. These effects are consistently documented in post-lobotomy clinical case studies. You feel me? That was literally documented in post-lobotomy clinical case studies. It happened for real. Okay, it happened for real. Now let's talk about the connection with religion and the churches. How religious influence became more effective. After undergoing lobotomy, many patients became passive and dependent, sought external structure and guidance, were less capable of resisting suggestions, accepted beliefs presented by authority figures without scrutiny. Okay? In institutional environments, pastors, chaplains, and missionaries were often regular visitors to the wards. So every time they put them in this mental asylum or they took them to the hospital to do the procedure, immediately they would bring a pastor, a minister, or a chaplain of a church, framed as a moral stabilizing influence, positioned as trusted authority figures. You feel me? That's some of the roles of those churches that was put in our communities. And today you cannot tell our people we were not Christians. They'll send you to hell. You feel me? You cannot tell them that Jesus was made up. They will send you to hell. They don't realize that this is what happened to them. They don't realize that. Their memories were wiped out and new information was planted in. Y'all think it only happened in movies? No, it's recorded. It's recorded as real experiences that our people went through. Next, this created conditions where religion or religious perspectives could be easily adopted, reinforced, regardless of a patient's prior beliefs. Institutional context. State mental hospitals commonly partnered with church chaplaincies. They partnered with them. Why is a church partnering with asylum homes after a lobotomy process? Explain that to me. Opposed to going and saying, man, listen, this is unethical. This is not of God. You cannot practice this type of butchery on people. That should have been the first thing that the church should have done. Not be a partner after it's done. So therefore, the church was an accomplice in those procedures that was wiping out people's memory. Okay? Religious participation was often encouraged as part of the what? Rehabilitation. We're gonna take your memory, but we're gonna make sure you go to church as a form of rehabilitation. Patients had limited autonomy to refuse the programming because once you become a ward, there's nothing else you could do. You have to go with the program. You feel me? For indigenous patients in particular, traditional spiritual practices were frequently labeled pathological. Christianity was presented as a civilizing or corrective. Post-lobotomy compliance made resistance unlikely. Go look it up. It happened for real. Man, I keep telling people, man, this is so deep. And I know this is the first time a lot of you hear that today. But I promise you, it happened. Now, summary of statement. Although lobotomy was not intended as a method of religious conversion, its documented effects, once again, documented effects, this is not my opinion. I'm telling you stuff that you could research and find it yourself, including diminished critical thinking, heightened compliance and dependency, made patients significantly more susceptible to influence by authority figures, including religious leaders. Okay? Why do you think some people in the church, whether it's a man or a woman, they would have more allegiance to a pastor, okay, than their own husband? That is part of the conditioning. You feel me? Religious leaders, particularly within institutional settings where participation in religious activities was encouraged. Historical significance. This dynamic connects lobotomy to broader patterns of identity disruption, cultural erasure, and belief replacement, not through persuasion, but through neurological vulnerability, and institutional control. Coercion without your consent. They still do it today. Two sisters in our republic, they had like nothing crazy, minor legal situations. You feel me? And then when they went to court, you know, we make sure that they had documents to show that they are actually American Indians, indigenous. Do you know what the judge did? The judge literally motioned the court to take them into a psychiatric evaluation for saying they are American Indians. This same thing is happening today, people, because they're telling them they're crazy. So guess what? They came back to me. They said, Chief, this is what happened. I said, don't worry, I got you. I put some documents together with the letterhead of the Republic and the seal of the Republic, and I sent that to the judge. Guess what? He left their asses alone. Because this is not a game. I keep telling y'all I was sent to restore my people, but maybe one day y'all gonna learn who I truly am. I keep telling y'all this. And I keep telling y'all everything is already in place. The Republic is already in place. But I'm not gonna force you or beg you to be a part of nothing. But watch things unfold. Okay? Note on historical integrity. This lesson relies on documented medical history. This is not things that I'm creating out of thin air. No, this is documented medical history. State hospital practice that, okay? And congressional investigations, they have those records. Where records are incomplete or obscured, the absence itself reflects systematic erasure rather than absence of harm. You feel me? Next. Documented mechanisms used to erase indigenous identity, language, and memory. This document outlines historically documented mechanisms beyond lobotomy used against American Indians / Native Americans, indigenous people, whatever you want to call us, to disrupt identity, suppress languages, alter worldview, and severe intergenerational continuity. These mechanisms were systematic, policy-driven, and widely implemented across the United States and other colonial contexts. Okay? Number one, forced boarding and residential schools. Schools such as the Kalaya schools, they had a lot of them. Okay, but that was one of the main ones. Okay? Indigenous children were forcibly removed from families and placed in boarding schools, residential schools under federal and church authority. You hear that? Not just federal, but church authority. So when they were putting our people in schools, all right, to teach them that they were Africans, they were putting Native Americans in school to teach them they were indigenous. You see, y'all, too many of you don't realize that we are at war. We have always been at war since 1493. They told us it ended in 1923. No, we are still at war. You feel me? It ended with the American Indians on paper in 1923, but it continued with the people that was reclassified. And it's still happening today as Black or African American. I keep telling y'all, there's no such thing as a Black American. There's no such thing as Black Indigenous. There's no such thing. It doesn't exist. There are only Black persons. And Black persons, they are from Africa and they belong to a racial group in Africa that's not tied to any landmass or any original people. But y'all just don't want to give up being Black because you think you call yourself Black. You're separating yourself from other indigenous people around America. The United States is not America. But y'all going to learn the hard way. Because even in the good book or the old book or the bad book, whatever you want to call it, it says what? God's people pray for the lack of knowledge. And in Exodus, it said, yeah, I know my people, they are a stiff-necked people. That means your head is hard. You don't want to let go Black for whatever reason. You want to hold on to it because you think it's going to bring you something. It's going to bring you nothing but pain and strife and suffering. I guarantee you that. Watch it come into fruition and watch it manifest. Keep holding on to the illusion and see what's going to happen. Everything that you have will be taken away because you are be lacking. Remember what I taught y'all before? In the Hebrew alphabet, the letter B is represented by a house. Okay, go look it up. In the Hebrew alphabet, what is the representation of the symbol for the letter B? It's a house. Now go look at the etymology of the word lack. It means to be to be sufficient, not to have, to be without. So therefore, when you say you are black, it means that your house is without, your house is lacking, but y'all just don't get it. You just don't get it, or you don't want to get it. That's what I think it is. Because they say when you know the truth, when you know better, you do better. That's not true. I say when you know better, you're supposed to. The problem is most people know better because I've been teaching that for so long. But y'all refuse to do better. And like I told y'all before, anybody calling our people black, whether they know it or not, they're agents to our people. I will never call original indigenous people, American Indians, black. I don't care under what circumstances. I rebuke that. That's why I call myself the Black Identity Slayer, because I know the detriment of that. All that was part of the programming. All right? Let us proceed. So once again, these institutions explicitly aimed, all right, to eliminate indigenous identity. Children were renamed, punished for speaking their languages, and separated from elders, resulting in the loss of oral history and cultural memory. So to you Native Americans, why is that if you were the people who actually went through that process, how come you still speak your indigenous language from Eurasia? How come you still speak it? Because your language is not indigenous to the Americas. So how come you still speak yours, but we don't? Because we were the ones who went through that process, not you. That's why they were labeled as Negroes. Because you would never identify yourself as a Negro. You know why I know? Because of the disdain you have for our people today. The hate you have for our people today. You know why you hate our people. It's not because you think we want to be you. You know we're not Native Americans. You know that. You know we are the American Indians. You know that to be a fact. But you're fighting an internal battle because you were put in place to live that lie. And therefore you have told the lie for so long that it's eating you up on the inside. That's why you see our people are waking up to identify who we truly are. And it's driving y'all crazy. And instead of just coming out and speak the truth, you are still holding on to the lie. It's eating you up on the inside until you're going to deteriorate. Only the truth will set us free, not some of the truth, not half the truth. The truth. You cannot dissect the truth. It is what it is. That's why I always come with the truth. Unapologetically. You feel me? That's why I don't play these black games. I don't play that. Anyway, let's proceed. Number 2, language and suppression policies. Original indigenous languages were criminalized or punished within schools and institutions. Once again, Native Americans, why weren't you punished for speaking your language? Why it was only us? Why it was only us? Y'all still speak yours because you hold that against us. But no, I'm telling my people exactly what happened. Now what? And it can be proven because it's well recorded. It's well recorded. So I keep telling y'all, I'm not the one to be played with. Okay? Nah, not me. I got this. I was sent to restore my people. Go look at my videos 2014, 2015. I'm saying the same thing I'm saying in 2026. I'll be saying it in 2028 and 2030. And I'll say it on the next Jubilee, 2033. None of y'all could take that from me. I was ordained to come. And I'm here. Let us proceed. Because the language structures, memory, and worldview, its suppression caused deep cognitive and cultural disorientation. That's why the majority of our people are disorientated right now. Cultural cognitive dissonance. They think they're African. And there's nothing wrong if you are an African, no. But the truth of the matter is over 95% to 98% of us all over the Americas are not Africans. All that was designed and put in place. And people cannot just fathom. What you mean? Well, they show us the records in Africa. What you think, that cannot be created? They taught us that in school. Well, they taught you that Easter Bunny is real. And y'all think bunnies lay eggs. Y'all think Santa Claus is the one that come down through the chimney and give you the gifts. Y'all thought they taught you that Abraham Lincoln was a pale man. They taught you that King James and King Charles and Queen Anne and Queen Elizabeth and all the nobles of Great Britain, they taught you that they were pale people. But guess what? They lied about that too. Oh, y'all didn't know that? I got proof. So what make you think if they could lie about all of that and put all those things in place, what make you think they could not have created the slave story with the 12.5 million coming from Africa? Isn't it very ironic that 12.5, look at the numbers, that 12.5 million so-called Africans came into the Americas, and then 12.5 European Slavs came into the Americas, Caucasian people. And then both those, how would I put it? Both those so-called, numbers were solidified in the 20th century to 12.5 million. Isn't that interesting? What a parallel. One is called a slave and one is called an immigrant. Let it make sense. Let it make sense. You see, what they're not telling you is this, that our people were not slaves. Our people were already here, but their identity was changed. And therefore, if your identity is changed from American Indian to Negro, indicating and insinuating Negro de terra, the Negroes of the land, and that translates to the black of the land, that's what takes your status away from the land. Not actual physically, but actual only on paper. So our people were made African on paper. So that was the transition. The testing ground was the Caribbean. That's where it all started. So a lot of you Negroes who think that you were called American Indian before people from the Caribbean, you have no idea what the hell you're talking about. You're just another lost Negro. Most likely you have that black European colonial blood in you. And I promise you, you're more African than people in the Caribbean. I guarantee you that. So don't play these games. I'm not here to play the games. That's where it started. The first people to be called American Indians. The first people to be called West Indians. The first people that all these things were practiced on. They were the first guinea pigs or human pigs, whatever you want to call them. So if in 2025, 2026, 2027, y'all want to continue to play the separation game while all these foreigners, the real immigrants are coming together, especially the ruling ones, and y'all don't realize the only way for us to step up and counter, literally fight against this is together as a collective, then ain't nothing I could do for y'all. Because a lot of you really think that the United States is truly your friend. You really think Trump is the one pulling all the shots, when the truth of the matter is Trump is just what? Just the executive CEO. And before I go, I'm going to show you something. All right? But let me finish this. Okay? Let me show you this. Check this out. All right? So therefore, because the language structures and memory and worldview, its suppression caused deep cognitive and cultural disorientation. Number 3, administrative reclassification, paper genocide. Indigenous people were reclassified in censuses, court records, and vital documents as Negro, colored, and mulatto, or free people of color. Guess what? They have them all over the Caribbean too. Tribal affiliations were removed or ignored, severing legal identity from ancestral identity and making lineage recovery difficult or almost impossible. That's why some people cannot go past, guess what? The 1700s, the 1800s, because they make it impossible. Why do you think the Mormons, the Church of Latter-day Saints, they all over the Americas? No matter where you go in the Americas, you have a Church of Latter-day Saints. Why is that? And they own the largest database of everybody's ancestry. You tell me it wasn't part of the plan. Nah, Chief, you don't know what you're talking about. You see, a lot of you haven't traveled outside of the US, so you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. I know, because I've traveled. And those are the things that I look into. Okay? These people are all over the Americas, and they own the largest database of everybody's ancestry. They partner up with all the DNA test companies because that's where they pull their database from, the Church of Latter-day Saints database that is based in Utah, the headquarters. Let it make sense. Let us continue. All right. Number 4, forced religious conversion and missionization. Indigenous spirituality systems were outlawed or labeled demonic. Voodoo. Oh, it's demonic, it's pagan, it's evil. But yet still, while Christianity was imposed as the requirement for civilization. Okay, so to make you civilized, they have to make you a Christian. See, all people want to be civilians. They want to be civilized. So therefore, they wanted to be Christians. Children were taught to reject ancestral beliefs. Okay, internalize shame about their heritage and adopt and accept external religious authority. Number 5, institutionalization and asylums. Indigenous individuals were frequently labeled insane, like I told y'all before. In our republic, when they went to the hospital, not the hospital, to the courts, and told them they were American Indians, the judge put in orders so that they could go to a psychiatric ward, making them think they're crazy. But don't worry about that. The chief had that. I took care of that ASAP. ASAP. I guarantee they left them alone. You feel me? So they want you to think that you're insane for practicing your ceremonies, speaking your language, or resisting assimilation. Because we don't want to assimilate. They want us to think we're crazy. You feel me? Because we want to decolonize. What do you think everything is happening right now? Because the original people are waking up, so they are positioning themselves. This ain't got nothing to do with illegal immigrants. Got nothing to do with that. But like I said, a lot of you are going to learn the hard way. Watch it happen. They were confined to asylums or institutions and subjected to isolation, sedation, electroconvulsive therapy, and behavioral conditioning. Number 6, child removal and adoption. Indigenous children were placed within non-indigenous facilities or institutions, cutting off cultural transmission, right? Across 2 to 3 generations, that's about 50 to 60 years, right? This process reliably resulted in identity loss, cultural confusion, and historical amnesia. My people, it only takes about 50 to 60 years to literally wipe out your memory and make you something else. I'm going to give you a prime example. 1967 was a jubilee. I explained that in lessons before, so I'm not going to go expound on it too much, but I'm going to talk about it. 1967, our people was waking up, getting ready for the new jubilee in 1968. Guess what they did? They put James Brown on the scene, tell our people that they were black. Guess what? 50 years, our people convinced that they are black. You see what happened? You see what happened? Right in our faces. And you cannot tell our people today that they are not black. It caused cultural confusion, loss of identity, historical amnesia, people. Before 1967, our people, you call our people black, those are fighting words. And then y'all get mad at people that wasn't born in the United States, as in being in the United States all their lives, and their parents. Y'all want to be mad at them because they don't want to be called black? Really? I'm not black. I was never black. Do me a favor. Prove to me that I'm not American Indian. You see how silly that sounds? But like I said, everything will come to light soon enough. Number 7, education and curriculum control. Educational systems taught colonial narratives that portrayed indigenous peoples as extinct or primitive. The absence of indigenous continuity, in curricula conditioned children to accept a reality in which they did not exist. Okay? Our people did not exist in the idea of being African or being black or being African American. What this represents, accurate framing. These mechanisms collectively constitute psychological warfare, cultural destruction, cognitive colonization, and identity reprogramming. They are documented in policy, institutional records, and survivor testimony, and do not require speculative explanations to be valid because it's real. You could go look it up. In plain English, indigenous identity was erased not primarily through surgery, but through forced child removal, language suppression, religious coercion, administrative reclassification, institutionalization, and intergenerational separation processes that can erase identity within 2 to 3 generations. That's all it took. Now you know what happened to our people, apart from the surgery of wiping our people's memories out. Man, this is real. Now check it out. Lobotomies performed on white and indigenous patients. Historical overview. Because guess what? The lobotomies was done on white people too. They were the first guinea pigs. All right? I just want y'all to know that. Because you see, I like to speak the truth. All right? I like to speak the truth. This document provides a concise, historically grounded overview confirming that lobotomies were performed on white, and I'm saying white as in so-called white people, okay? Nobody's white, nobody's black. Those are the statuses. But the people you identify as black today, it was as white today, it was performed on them as well, all right? So therefore, they were the patients as well as indigenous patients. The reason given for those procedures and the documentation or the documented differences is how and why this population was subjected to lobotomy. So the criteria for the procedure, it was different, and the results were different. And that's what we're going to break down right now, okay? Number 1, lobotomies performed on so-called white patients. Lobotomies were widely performed on white men and women in the United States between the 1930s and the 1950s, okay? Because why? They were preparing these people for the segregation period. My people, y'all just don't know what's going on, man. You feel me? I keep telling y'all that these colonizers, they're always 50 moves ahead. They were setting up the precedents for the white versus black. This was systematic. All right? So they had to wipe out their memory as well and inject new information in their mind that would now become the new memory. You feel me? The majority of recorded lobotomy patients were white, largely because white Americans made up the majority of institutionalized population common jurisdictions and included diagnoses such as depression, and I'll tell you why, depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, post-traumatic stress, and behavioral labeled as non-compliant or disruptive, and I'll tell you why. Because when these people were taken out of Europe, they were governed by so-called black Europeans. So they were treated as vagabonds, criminals. You see the same way that so-called black people are being treated in the United States? That's how these so-called white people were being treated in Europe by black rulers. So they had that trauma. So when they came into the United States, they were already dealing with that trauma, people. Especially, they were the first slaves that came in. They were the ones that were put on the field before indigenous people. So I keep telling y'all, this ain't got nothing to do with the color of skin, man. This is about systematic oppression. But of course, Caucasian people use it to their advantage because they think it was always going to work for them. Now that they realize everything is about to unveil, And the system is going to truly show you, we don't give a damn what you look like. It's always been about the bottom line. What's that? Profit and money. Now, a lot of them are coming out and speaking the truth. But mark my words, more and more tongues are going to confess and more knees are going to bow. How long have I told y'all that? They're all going to start confessing. And you know what more of them are going to confess? That the people that y'all call black, they are the American Indians. All of that is going to come out. Even Native Americans going to start speaking the truth. Watch. Because every knee has to bow and every tongue must confess. You feel me? Let us proceed. So therefore, that's why these Caucasians, they had to go through that. You dig? Women were frequently subjected to lobotomy for conditions described as hysteria, emotional instability, or resistance to social norms. That's why back in the days, in the 50s and 60s, all right, where a Caucasian woman would see a so-called, one of us, because I'm not going to say so-called black. I don't even want to attach that name to our people or that identity to our people. So I'm not even going to say so-called black. I'm just going to say one of us. Guess what? She would just scream hysterically. It is not because she was setting him up. No, it was because she was programmed to do that. They went under that process of lobotomy, and it was injected in the mind. When you see somebody who looked like this, you scream hysterically because they were setting up the whole plot, people. Y'all really think this is a game, huh? And it might sound like it's from a movie, but I'm telling you, it happened for real. Remember when Civil War came out, the movie? I told y'all it was a public service announcement. What's happening right now? What's happening right now? Same thing. Going around asking people, what type of American are you? Didn't I tell you that when was that? In 2017, 2018, I think. When the movie Get Out came out, didn't I tell you exactly what was supposed to be done? When 2017 the Jubilee came out, didn't I tell you what was supposed to be done? In 2025, the Jubilee last year, I told you what was supposed to be done. Your brother has always been on point. Never missed a beat. You did. Number 2, lobotomies performed on indigenous patients. Indigenous patients were lobotomized for less frequently in absolute numbers, but under markedly different circumstances. Many were institutionalized not for psychiatric illnesses, but for cultural practices, people. The language use, spiritual ceremonies, or resistance to assimilation policies. So for the Caucasian people, it was more of a trauma because of what they went through in Europe. You feel me? And then they were dumped into the Americas. That was their trauma. So when Trump talking about situations with white people were victims and people don't know what the hell he's talking about, you see, y'all don't know what the hell is, y'all don't know history. And I'm not talking about everybody. I'm talking about to the lost, ignorant souls. Yes, Caucasian people was victimized as well. And yes, they were put in a position so that it could be used to their advantage. I'm not denying that. But slavery had nothing to do with the color of skin, people. It was a business. Who you think was being sold all over Europe and in North Africa by the barbarian slave trade? The most prized slave ever in history was a Caucasian woman. Do y'all even know that? This is about business, the bottom line. And I promise you, you think it's the pale man that's at the head of this? No. It wasn't the pale man who started slavery. It was dark-skinned people that started slavery. But I know a lot of you ain't ready for that truth. Only the truth will set us free. And that's why I'm here to bring the truth. So y'all could get into your emotions. I don't give a damn. But I'm going to drop the truth. So therefore, indigenous identity itself was often treated as pathological. In these cases, lobotomy functioned as a tool of social control rather than a medical treatment. For Caucasian people, it was medical. Because like I said, they was going through that trauma. With our people, it was to erase our people's identity. And later, our people went through the trauma. of it being medical, because our people were not crazy people. We were not insane people. We were a godly people, if we want to use the word godly. Okay? We were a loving people. We still are today. But we had to be transformed through religion, through the surgical procedure, lobotomy, and social conditioning. Okay? Educational conditioning, religious conditioning. Number 3, key differences in application. So-called white patients were generally presented as recipients of experimental medical treatment aimed at symptom management through consent. Okay? They was doing it through consent because they needed that. Through consent. You feel me? It was often absent or coerced with the indigenous people. By contrast, you feel me? Because it was through a colonial administrative system to literally wipe out our indigeneity. Us being indigenous, us being American Indians. You see the difference? Okay. One was cultural, one was medical. For indigenous patients, lobotomy intersected with broader policies of cultural erasure, identity suppression, and forced assimilation. So to summarize this in plain English, so-called white people were lobotomized primarily under the guise of psychiatric treatment for mental illness or social non-conformity. All right? While indigenous people were more often lobotomized as part of a broader system aimed at controlling, silencing, or assimilating them, because we were the wild Indians. Okay? We were the wild Indians. In both cases, lobotomy represents a severe abuse of medical power, but for indigenous communities, it compounded existing colonial violence, which resulted in medical situations. Okay? All right, cool. Now, what I'm going to do is this. I'm done presenting the lesson on lobotomy, but I'm going to show you how to look a little deeper into lobotomy. I'm going to show you how to do that through what's called either a FOIA or different names that are used in different states. And there's a reason why I'm giving you that. Why? Because I want you to do your due diligence and go back between the 1930s and the 1960s, right? Early 70s, and go into your family records and see if your people had any procedures that were done, anything close to a lobotomy. And you could get those records. And I promise you, it's going to say Negro. Okay? Because they were American Indians. And they could not put American Indian. So they had two choices, Negro or other. Just giving y'all a little heads up. All right? So this is what you could do. And this is not no legal advice. All right? This is just information. Public records laws, a FOIA equivalence, names, filings, the process, and legal authority. This document provides a comprehensive overview of Freedom of Information Act, which is a FOIA. It's spelled FOIA, the acronym for Freedom of Information Act. Laws in the United States, including state-level equivalents, how to file requests, and the legal authority that prevents states from arbitrarily denying access to public records. So I'm going to teach you about that, not just for lobotomy, but for any public record that you want. I'm going to show you how to request it. Okay? Number 1, federal FOIA baseline. The name, Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, applies to federal agencies only. The same way I taught you the lesson on the SF-181 form, it is only for federal agencies only. So if you go to a state level and ask for any type of documents, and you ask for a FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, they will tell you they don't know what you're talking about. And you might think they're playing games. No, it's because you are asking for the wrong information. All right? So therefore, the Freedom of Information Act is only for federal agencies. And the authority is Title V, USC Section 552. It does not apply to state or local agencies. I repeat, it does not apply to state or local agencies. Okay? Next, number 2, state level records, laws, common names. Every state has a public records law. Common names include, I'm going to give you some examples in some states, all right? The ones I don't mention, go look it up in your own state. I'm just giving you a guideline to let you know the difference and how it's applied. In California, it's called California Public Records Act, CPRA. New York, it's called Freedom of Information Law, FOIL. Texas, Public Information Act, PIA. Florida, Public Records Law, Sunshine Law, /Sunshine Law. Pennsylvania, Right to Know Law, RTKL. Illinois, Freedom of Information Act. Virginia, Virginia Freedom of Information Act, VFOIA. Georgia, Open Records Act. Louisiana, Public Records Act. Ohio, Public Records Act. Michigan, Freedom of Information Act. New Jersey, Open Public Records Act, which OPRA, OPRA. I remember I did an Oprah in Jersey, and then when I saw the name Oprah, I started to laugh because I thought of Oprah, Anyway, yeah, that's neither here nor there. But anyway, side joke, right? If it's a joke at all. Washington, Public Records Act. Massachusetts, Public Record Law. So therefore, you could go into your respective state to find out exactly the equivalence of that to get public documents or information. All right. All other states have comparable statutes. Number 3, who can file? Most states allow any person to file a request, anybody. However, there are certain states that restrict filing to residents only. I'm going to give you 2 examples, Virginia and Tennessee. You must be a resident of that state to request any type of Freedom of Information documents or information, period. Okay? Do you need an attorney? No, no attorney is required. Do you need a reason? You don't need a reason. I would like to do this. That's it. They ask you why. You don't have to give them a reason. You ain't got to be rude, but you don't have to give them a reason because it's a public record and the public has a right to request those records. So you don't need a reason to request it. Number 4, what can be requested? You may request existing records, including emails, reports, arrest records, body camera footage, contracts, policies, and meeting minutes, and more. I just gave you a few of them. So if you get into a situation, you could actually do a Freedom of Information Act to get the record or the video from the police. You feel me? And I would suggest you do your own recording. So when you do your Freedom of Information Act, it will match what you have. So you know if they actually doctored theirs. Okay? I'm just putting y'all on a game. Let us next. You may not request answers to questions, opinions, or creation of new records. Okay? So let's read that again. You may not request answers to questions. What does that mean? If you have questions, that is not what the Freedom of Information asks. You're not requesting questions or answers to questions. You feel me? You're not requesting opinions. And you cannot create new records right on the spot. You dig? It's records that's already in place. You have every right to request them. Number 5, how to file a request step by step. Number 1, identify the correct agency and records custodian. You have to go to the right department. Sometimes they play games, but you have to be persistent, okay? Number 2, write a clear written request citing the applicable law. So you have to do your own due diligence. Number 3, submit by email, online portal, or certified mail. Number 4, track statutory response deadlines, often 3 to 5 business days. The fees. Inspection is typically free if you just want to inspect it. If you want copies, there are fees to copies, right? So copy fees are limited to actual cost. Punitive or excessive fees are not prohibited. Let's read that again. Punitive or excessive fees are prohibited. So therefore, they cannot charge you all this big set of money to get public documents that's there for the public. Okay? Number 7, what if they deny or ignore you? Agencies must cite a specific statutory exemption. Failure to respond by the deadline constitute constructive denial. All right? Everything is administrative. Everything in this corporation is administrative. You may appeal internally to an oversight authority or to a court. Number 8, can state legally deny you? That's very important. States cannot arbitrarily deny access to public records. Legal authority includes state public records, statutes, mandatory disclosure laws, due process clause of the 14th Amendment, First Amendment principles supporting access to government information, open government and open courts doctrines. Denial is lawful only if a specific statutory exemption applies and is cited. Okay? Number 9, key legal principle, plain English. If a record exists and no exemption applies, the agency must release that record. Public records law are not discretionary. Okay? Number 10, one sentence summary. Every U.S. state has a public records law equivalent to the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act. Anyone may file a written request for existing government records. Agencies must respond within statutory deadlines, and denial is lawful only when a specific exemption is in compliance with the process. So what does that mean? It means that for them to deny you, they have to show you a statutory, okay, a statutory exemption, and it has to be according to law. They cannot deny you. Okay? Now, I'm done with the lesson. I hope you guys found some value in what I brought to you today. Some of you, yes, it may have been the first time you have heard about this, and it's okay. But it was real, and it did exist, and a lot of old people went through it. So I cannot tell you what to do, but if I were you, I would go into records, whether it was to find out if my peoples had been admitted in any type of asylum, any type of hospital between the 1930s and the 1960s or early 70s. And then I would request Freedom of Information Act for all those records to see if they had a lobotomy. All right? All that stuff is information that we need to know and have. Okay? All right, cool. So enjoy the rest of your continuation. It's always an honor to bring information to y'all. By all means, I'm going to repeat that. Do your own due diligence. Don't believe anything that I say, because in the word believe is the word lie. Okay? Like I told y'all before, the republic is already established. Let us come together. Let's build and do what needs to be done, because y'all see the direction things are going in. And a lot of people are going to reflect on a lot of the things I've spoken on in the past. And y'all realize that I've always been on point with a lot of those things. Okay? So thank you, and enjoy the rest of your continuation. All right? One love.